I mentioned that I was at a meeting for ecumenical students from many different parts of the world, actually, about 80 of them. And one thing I had mentioned was the simple principles, pluralistic principles that are contained in what is popularly called Hinduism. And of course, remove the misunderstanding that the word Hindu doesn't refer to a religion in the classical way. No organizational structure, no head, no defined doctrines and dogmas. Theology, not that important, but the foundation of it is philosophy. And even there, we have to remove a misunderstanding, because philosophy to most people, Western people, for example, will imply a kind of intellectual gymnastics, a kind of uh, exploration of the world purely from a possibility, almost scientifically speculative approach. And we can approach life from various points of view. We experience our physicality, we experience the physicality of the world. So some philosophies will emphasize that physicality. It's nothing new. It was there way back, thousands of years back. Another approach will be from the mental point of view, the psychology point of view, the idealist point of view. And another one will be from the experiential point of view, which also has to conform to logic. And all the Upanishads, known as Vedanta, are exploring the actual experiential point of view. I am experiencing this. Shruta Upanishad, the famous passage says, no children are immortal. I have seen. And so all the rishis in the Vedas will use that approach. We have a kind of tendency to think that the Upanishads are all of a sudden created and are diverse or separate and different from the rest of the Vedas. But that wouldn't be true, because we have the Purusha Suktam contained in the Rig Veda. We have the Nasadya Suktam also there. The highest possible way of thinking is contained there in the Rig Veda. And so it should be no surprise that this grows and develops into something more systematic. And even the Upanishads are not so systematic, but they are experiencing teachings, and they all become consolidated, more organized in their thought, more philosophical in their approach, as it were. That means explanatory, discussion, discursive in the Brahma Sutras. And then for the common person, the person who doesn't live in the head, but wants to experience something simplified in the principles of the Bhagavad Gita. These three things constitute our Prasthanatraya, our threefold reference point. And there are other approaches contained in the Puranas and so on and so forth for the common person, as it were. But we cannot ignore the fundamental truths that are contained in the Vedas. And it's very tempting to say Indra used to be the main deity in the Vedas, in the Samhita portion, and yet was demoted and so on and so forth. That's maybe not so true, because it's the idea, an ideal of Indra. There are hymns in the Vedas praising Indra as father and mother. It's the father-mother concept. Not only father-mother concept, but also the leader of knowledge, the one who knows everything. Now, all of these attributes come under a heading, and that is considering the highest possible principle that we popularly call God, as contained, as having some qualities. And where do we get the qualities from? We see the highest principles in nature itself, including human nature. And we see that must be, whatever is the ideal of perfection, it must be the superlative version of that and worthy of praise. And we can see that everywhere. So there should be no distractions. We were discussing earlier about noise. Supposing you're living in a house and the next door neighbors are not so considerate and they're playing loud music, particularly in the early hours of the morning, let us say, what should we do? Well, we shouldn't maybe lie down and accept it. We should be kind enough to point out. But even if that doesn't work, then we also have to see every kind of experience that we have will be a kind of clue. It will be a kind of manifested version of what is there originally and full of divine glory if we look at it correctly. All sound comes from the primordial Om. All sound, all vibration. And modern science tells us very clearly what the yogis had discovered thousands and thousands of years ago, namely that whatever we're experiencing, be it sights or sounds, all come under the category of vibrations or oscillations. We don't see it like that, of course. But the reality of the Upanishads tells us that we are free, that we are pure consciousness. Vedanta adds an extra dimension, as it were, or aspect to modern science, which has shifted and changed. According to the ancient Greeks, there was space and there was time. And space was something that accommodates matter. All objects are only there or understood because of space. And time is just a measurement of events passing by, like trains going through a station. Now, Isaac Newton, coming so many 1500, 1600 years later, would have said, all right, but actually things are absolute. Whether matter is there, whether it's not, whether energy is there, whether it's not, space and time are absolutes. They will always be there, even if nothing else is there. And Einstein comes along and revises that, makes it all relativistic again. And in special relativity, he brings in, instead of 3 dimensions of space, which is there, length, breadth, height, he adds another thing, time, makes it a 4-dimensional thing. That's living with us today. If he had left it there, it would have been fine, but general relativity, he puts one other thing, matter. And if you take one away, the whole thing is gone. Now, Sankhya, curiously enough, more ancient than any of those, puts in one other dimension called mind. And the yogis go along with that as well, mind. But Vedanta puts in another aspect called consciousness. And for this reason, we can't agree with any of the preceding speculations. Or at least we think they're incomplete. They may be true as far as they go, but they are incomplete. And so consciousness, where do we arrive at that? It is through experience. It is through direct seeing. So the Kena Upanishad will give us this. It reveals this ultimate reality of the Upanishad as a given fact of experience. Pratibhuta viditam matam, which is the ever-present subject of all experience. And this conclusion comes not from philosophical speculations. It says that it is only this one entity that we can call Brahman. We can call by any other thing as well, but that alone is the eternal witness behind all the different states of consciousness. And by saying this, we can understand experientially what we ourselves are experiencing, but maybe not acknowledging on a day-by-day basis. We experience ourselves 3 worlds, but we don't explore it, and we only endorse one as our reality, namely our waking state. And so all these different states of consciousness are displayed, as it were, before us, and it is that alone which is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, and that is what we give as qualities to the various highest reality. The Kena Upanishad will tell us also the story of how the highest spiritual knowledge was imparted to the deities by none other than a female deity, Uma, the daughter of the king of the mountains, Himavat. And so we now have another expressed aspect of this, going back, so that we can uncover all conceptual basis of what we cannot conceive of, and yet what we experience. The greatness of human birth is mentioned in this Upanishad as well, the highest possibility that lies before it. And so self-realization can be had in this very life. Says this Upanishad and various others. And if you have realized this here, then there is truth. And if you haven't realized here, there's great destruction. And so the wise people, they, having realized this supreme principle of Brahman in all beings, not just in themselves, having turned away from the world, they become immortal. So there's a passage like that. Iha chidavedi ata satyam masti na chidi havedi mahati vina stiha. Bhuteshu bhuteshu vichintya dhiraha pritya smaloka damrata bhavanti. We have to take these statements very seriously. Now, if this is the case, the next question arises, how is it we don't really know it or experience it in our waking state of noise, of arguments, of different points of view, of world affairs, of job pressures, work pressures, many different things? How is it? If we are free, why is it we don't feel it? And the answer is because there are a number of different obstacles. Now, you can take obstacles in two different ways. Somebody once told me, what is life? Well, sometimes you're the pigeon and other times you're the statue. I think you know what I mean. And if you give yourself a reality check, then you might even say, well, yes, but my check bounced. You see, here's the point. These obstacles are there and they're presented in different examples. You cannot see the sun on occasion because a cloud is in the way. When the cloud moves on, you'll see the sun. When the obstacle moves away, as it were, or some other visual impression of this, description of this analogy will be a veil. Looking through a mirror darkly is a Christian mystic expression, a Pauline expression. So a kind of veil, the veil of Maya. And the veil of Maya is also the veil of tears, or the valley of tears. So therefore, the Upanishads and other texts give us this practical dimension. If we are in a state of sorrow, how do we get a state of glory? How do we get from what a pity to what a glory? Except by cultivation and practice. And we have to be diligent about it. We have to be consistent about it. But first of all, we have to be absolutely convinced about this world as it is. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyoti gamaya, mrityo amritam gamaya. There's acknowledgement that even though this seems to be a kind of reality, it is only a relative reality. An absolute reality sits behind that. And this is not only logically presented, but as I say, it's our experience which we put to one side. We emphasize on one aspect of the state of consciousness. Now, this whole question of obstacles is taken up in the yoga philosophy. So in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, in its very first section, it's Khanda. Bear in mind a sutra is a thread, so you get the bare minimum that has to be expanded on by a teacher. And so the whole idea, presented from a psychological point of view, is that the reality, the truth is there, even though the details of the philosophy may not be fully agreeable at the end of the day. Still, the analysis of it and the process of getting over is emphasized. We would hardly agree with that. I mentioned there are two ways of viewing obstacles. One is, in this example of the cloud moving on, we can patiently understand, no, the sun is there. And I will, if I'm careful, I'll look out and I'll see when the cloud moves on, I will witness the sun, not only the sun, but its rays that are spreading everywhere. And maybe that can give me some inspiration about how the sun behind the sun is working. That then becomes a clue. When I look at the beautiful daffodils at the moment, somehow almost springing from nowhere, I have to wonder how nature decided that after winter, it'll cheer us up with a bright yellow, orange-yellow color. Not only that, but nature will bring us the white of the daisies, will bring us the contrasting yellow of the buttercups. It is something that we don't experience in Africa and Zimbabwe. We only have, in some parts of Zimbabwe, we only have 2 seasons, summer and hell. In other places, we have the rainy season and the dry season. But these 4 seasons, we don't really have. We have other beautiful things, no doubt. It is only coming here to Ireland that I can appreciate the beauty of these 4 seasons. In India, of course, it's 5 seasons. The monsoon is also there. So these examples we understand, but it still doesn't register as our experience. Only when we start our practice. And 2 ways of viewing the so-called obstacles. I mentioned the attitude of patience, but also there's another way of looking at it. Either these are insurmountable, problematic things, leading us to a state of despair, or they are part of a sporting environment that when we know we have the capability, the possibility, the instrumentality of overcoming them, getting around them, then life becomes a great, great adventure. Not only do we know how to get around the obstacles, but we also enjoy the process. And so I entitled this talk The Game of Hurdling, because in many of my talks I gave this example. Supposing we are selected by Olympic Committee, as my example, and they say, we put you in the hurdling team, and we get together and we write a communal letter saying, thank you very much. We all accept, we've considered our team, we've selected our team, and we accept on one condition, you please take the hurdles away. But what kind of thing would be that? What kind of sport would it be? So to take life on with a sporting attitude would be extremely important. One of the fundamental books I recommend to people, and not only here, but I do it in France because it's published also in French, that is The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel-Shinn. And there she takes this game of sowing and reaping, or giving and receiving, as a kind of game, a divine game that we are free to play on the basis that we are individually designed to play different parts. And that's part and parcel of it. And we shouldn't say everybody should be like us. We'll acknowledge the differences and go on. At yesterday's conference, I mentioned how, and I highlighted the poem or the thought that I produced for that day, that we are all constitutionally different and we have to celebrate the differences. We don't make a unity of existence or attitudes by making sure we all wear the same clothes. There are some societies historically and even today who decide we'll all wear the same clothes, we'll all conform, we'll all be like worker ants and do the same regimes, wear the same clothing, and have the same kind of social philosophy. So what kind of fun would that be? What kind of a world would it be if everything was green and there was no color variety in our nature? And so we are designed to be varied for the simple joy of it, it seems. The variation is something, the contrast is something that gives us scope for enjoyment, just as in a garden, the variations highlight the intrinsic beauty of the garden. It is in the variations where the beauty lies. And this is the same thing with all of us. We're all on the same road, but we will all have our varied ways, our varied approaches, exclusive to our own self. And we shouldn't argue that mine is the only way. So what are these various obstacles that we're coming across? Well, the primary obstacle is the lack of knowledge, the lack of knowing that in fact we are not the objective conscious state, we are the subjective consciousness itself, the witness, the eternal witness. It is not that this world is so real that when it passes from our view, called death, it is a supreme tragedy. No, it's not. We don't grieve when this world disappears and my passport self goes with it, and I re-emerge in a different scenario as a witness or a participant in a dream world with all the same conditions of time and space and causality present. We don't grieve when even that disappears, and I was enjoying the dream so much, and then I come into a blank, an enjoyment of a state of peace. We find the same thing when we're under a general anesthetic, a kind of joy of peace that we can observe. And because we can observe it, we're able to recall, oh, I was in such a peaceful state. Now you've woken me up. You've brought me back to the so-called real world. So some people tell me, I don't suffer from stress because of this world. I'm a carrier of it. I create stress. Now the resulting impression from what is called supreme concentration, which is a kind of unity, which technically we call samadhi, obstructs all other impressions. It eclipses all other impressions, in other words. And then it says that by the restraint of even these various obstacles and so on and so forth, it goes on like that. But in its second chapter, or its second section, we are told about a technique, how to overcome these obstacles. 3 things are emphasized in the yoga philosophy of Patanjali. One is what we might call, unfortunately translated as mortification. Mortification, in the Middle Ages in Western monasticism, monks wore a simple cloth, but underneath it a hair shirt. If you think listening to loud music makes you a little sensitive and prickly, imagine wearing a hair shirt. But this was understood to be, if I can overcome this, if I can ignore this, if I can bear this, then it will strengthen my will. And so it is the case, mortification in that sense. But every practice will have some system that strengthens the will. Currently, the Muslims are undergoing Ramadan, fasting from sunrise to sunset. And doesn't it strengthen the will? Doesn't it take your attention and give you the opportunity to steer it towards something more profound, namely in the case of Muslims, Allah. On Tuesday is Ekadashi. Some of you will be fasting. Doesn't it strengthen your will? In this time of Lent for Christians, it is a time of fasting. It is a time of modifying your sense of luxuries, training the sense organs. Isn't this strengthening the will? And doesn't strengthening the will allow us to concentrate? And will that not have effect of eclipsing all the various obstacles which are here now? So these three things are there. Tapa is there. And then we also have Sutyaya, the Sutyaya study meaning not necessarily intellectual study, but the practice of japa, the practice of the repetition of a holy phrase or name. And also studying the scriptures, reciting the scriptures. In other words, breaking your day up in such a way that we are continuously more and more and more mindful of our own internal reality. And that reality is actually the same as the external entity that we worship as God. And so the third thing will be surrendering the fruits of your actions to that God. We'll call Ishvara, to that deity, whose energy we are supplying, whose energy is there. These three things are a preparatory thing. These three things are called Kriya Yoga. And all of this is for the practice of concentration, minimizing what is called pain-bearing obstructions. Surrendering the fruits of work to your Ishtadevata, to your God, is to take ourselves neither, or take to ourselves neither credit nor blame, but to give both up to the Lord and be at peace. Are you at peace? Well, people are struggling. Oh, I did this at work yesterday. I did that at work yesterday. I said this to this person. I said that to that person. Will they take offense? Should I take offense? All these kinds of meanderings of thoughts are going on. And yet, if you take all the fruits of your activities, whatever they are, you are absolving yourself from credit and you're absolving yourself from blame. You're absolving yourself from pairs of opposites which are disturbing to the mind, and you're surrendering them. Lord, this is your energy, I give it back to you. Supposing you say, well, my work wasn't so good, the fruits of my labor was wanting. It's all right. Well, next time, I'll make sure I give it to you in a better way. The whole thing is down to practice. But why would she say that these obstacles bring us pain? These are described really as pain-bearing obstructions. And what are they? So our absence of understanding, our true knowledge, is the key obstacle, mother of all the other obstacles. This is called avidya, in contrast to vidya, something that we know, and the rest are children, if you will, of that main thing. The key obstacle when we look for the sun, to not being able to observe the sun, is a cloud. Never mind about all the other things. If you take, for example, the current cosmological model, there's a story like that. A king goes away to a foreign land. He's entitled and used to, when he comes back, to have a 21-gun salute in his honor. He goes away, not a single cannon goes off. He asks the chief minister, what happened here? And the chief minister says, quite a few things happened. But the first thing is, we didn't have any ammunition. We didn't have any, all the cannons were out of, well, never mind about the other obstacles. That alone is enough. So the ignorance alone is enough, and how to remove it? We have to use the antidote only of knowledge. And when I say knowledge, we're talking about real understanding, seeing. Seeing is believing. We have to see. We have to start off by seeing by understanding the principle of it first. Supposing somebody tells me there's an island in the Pacific Ocean, which is like a kind of paradise, the first thing I have to do is, and in this age of information, I can easily do it. I look up the celestial Google and I see, oh yes, it's true. There is such an island and it can be accessed and there are tours going on. Knowing that is a fraction of the usability of it, of this information, because the vast usage of it will be take a plane, go there, land there, spend a week or two there, understand the island, understand its beauty, have a nice holiday, and come back and tell others, yes, there is such, and they'll repeat the process possibly. So direct experience is really the only valid thing that we can do. And the beauty about the historical Hinduism is it gave every person an opportunity to challenge the truths of the Vedas, of their own scriptures, and to experience for themselves and validate what others are saying. Now, if we don't do this, what will happen? Pain. Pain will happen. Why will pain happen? It's because the consequence of this ignorance is that we go into a defensive position or attacking position. An individual stronghold is what we create. And this is the next obstacle. The obstacle, the first child of ignorance, and that would be this sense of egoism. Now that's different from ego, but egoism. Egoism is the original witness, the original scene, getting mixed up with the object so that I identify myself as the object. The human body is an object. It's an object of my scrutiny. The mind, the whole psychological range, is an object. I can see it. I can control it. If it wasn't like that, there could be nothing I can do about my health. There could be nothing I could do about my psychological conditions. I simply resign and give up. There was a person who told me, he said, I spent quite a fortune, 400 euros on gym fees, and it had no impact on me whatsoever until I found out, oh, you actually have to go to the gym. Oh, okay. Then it does it work. So if we are in this condition, in this small bubble called egoism, and that's why we deal with the whole Enneagram, essence of truth, and so on, is to establish what variety, what kind of egoism is giving me pain. If I am free from this small limitation, I'm also free from the struggle to preserve it. But if I don't do that, then I fall into the trap of the other obstacles. What are they? A struggle between attachment and aversion, pleasure and pain. A struggle between trying to preserve happiness on the one side and avoid fearful situations on the other side. And in order to sustain this and get some meaning from life, I don't want to get this attachment severed. And that means that the last attachment will be, the last klesha or obstacle will be this attachment to the body, clinging desperately to this life, not wishing for it to go away, not even wishing for others to go away. So these are the 5 pains they're described as pains, the 5-fold things that tie us, bind us down. And ignorance is the cause, and the other 4 really are its effects. And in fact, it's the only cause of all our misery. So if you want to say, I'm miserable, I don't feel well, I'm in a nervous state, I'm in a stressful state, these are all registered painful situations. What is the cause of it? The cause of it is this unfortunate interpretation of the world that we have. This is fundamentally called our ignorance. So what else, apart from these, can make us miserable? Nothing. The nature of the soul or the eternal self is actually eternal bliss. We get a clue about it when we go into a dreamless sleep. And what can make it sorrowful if it is ever free and always blissful? The only thing is ignorance, hallucination, delusion. All pain of the soul is simply delusion. And you may say, well, if I hold that point of view, then it doesn't seem very practical. I still have to face life. Well, we have to deal with this in a different way. And that is, we can see it as a game where hurdles are there and we know how to get around them. And the how to get around them is this practice that we call yoga, using the four faculties of the mind, using our worship, our feeling, our deep-rooted heart, and steering that toward love of the beauty that we find all around us, the author of this beauty. There's no separate contrasting or contradictory aspects in the Vedas. You may say, but the Vedas are very confusing because all the hymn portions are giving praise to this god and that god, starting off with Agni, one third. One third is of the hymns of praises, Agni. Where does it start? Well, because Agni is seen to be linked with sacrifice. And that means that the only connection we have to the beyond is through offering items into this magical thing called fire. And that is our offering. That will be our link. Therefore, the messenger is as important as the entity that is delivering, it's delivered to. And then what are these devas? These are entities beyond the range. Are they separate? Are they individual? No, these are qualities. These are various aspects, because you cannot confine all the glory of the divine into a few narrow words or a few narrow concepts. It is infinite. Infinite descriptions have to be there. Call them as you will. And all of them will be the same one entity, described and viewed in different ways, giving us a wonderful pluralistic scope. The capacity to direct all our actions has covered dedicating the fruits of all your activities to this highest authority, this highest principle, this most intimate and deep source of your life, so that all of our actions then become entirely yogic, entirely spiritual. Work becomes worship. And then to take all our study, all our mental capacity, and offer it by discernment, discerning what is good, what is not good, what is permanent, what is not permanent. So that immediately when we look at an object, we see it in its real form, beyond the scope of the eyes. We see the possibility behind what the eyes see. And ultimately we see only that self. We take it that step further. We take that in the Vedantic sense then. We go beyond the philosophy of yoga. So egoism, and we're so coming back to ignorance, ignorance is taking the non-eternal, the impure, the painful, and the non-spiritual self for the eternal, the pure, the happy, and the Atman, or self respectively. So all the different sorts of impressions that we have only one source, ignorance. And so we naturally have, and I'm reading here from Vivekananda's commentary on this, we have first to learn what ignorance is. And all of us think, I am the body, I'm not the self, the pure, the effulgent, the ever blissful, and that is ignorance. We think of man and see man as body. This is the great delusion. The famous book, The God Delusion. There should be a book that says The World Delusion. And actually, the book of that is really the Upanishads, tells us all that. And then egoism, what is that? The identification of the seer with the instrument of seeing. We don't make any mistake about the instrumentality of something else. When we play a musical instrument, we don't say, I am the instrument. We would never even occur to us to make this confusion. And so we are thinking that this body is not an instrument. It is an identity. No, it expresses, no doubt, an identity. Like a kind of prism that manifests some colors. But are the colors the prism? No. And is my observation of the colors the prism? No. So when we carefully examine things, we can always make this distinction between the observer and the thing that is observed. The process of seeing in between. When we mix it all up, this is called me, my history, my ups and downs, my difficulties. Then I may register, like somebody said, some days I'm the pigeon and some days I'm the statue, and I can't seem to get out of it. And some people may say, you see that in computer terms, on the keyboard of life, here's my recommendation, always keep one finger on the escape key. That doesn't work either. So the seer is really the divine self, the pure one, the ever holy, the infinite, the immortal. It is the thing that we are worshipping externally. It is the self of man. And what are the instruments? The mind. Now yoga, Sankhya and yoga have this wonderful geography of the mind. They're saying that it is chitta or mind stuff. And then there's a buddhi, a determinative faculty. And then there is manas or mind. And then there is indriyas or sense organs. These are the instruments by which we are able to see this external world. Without them, we won't see it. And one faculty being less, we won't see it in the same way that is generally being seen. And so, the identification of the self with the instruments, that is what is called ignorance of egoism. So we also say, maybe, all right, I can accept I'm not the body. We can say, I am the mind. I'm thought. I'm angry, or I'm happy. But how can we be angry and how can we hate? We should identify ourselves with the self that cannot change. Because if you say I am angry, clearly I'm not angry all the time. If I say I'm sad, clearly I'm not sad all the time. How can I be different modes, different states, different people? So if it's unchangeable, how can it be one moment happy, one moment unhappy? It's formless, infinite, omnipresent. Then what can change it? So, same thing with our attachment. Our attachment we define as the thing that dwells on pleasure. We find pleasure for different people in certain things, and the mind, like a current, flows toward them. And so, following the pleasure center, as it were, is what is called attachment. Sometimes we think, I had a difficult day, so here's my compensation. I will entertain the senses, let us say, sense of taste, or the visual sense. I'll watch something pleasant. Anyway, we are never attached where we do not find pleasure. So attachment and pleasure go hand in hand. And we find pleasure in very interesting things, difficult things sometimes, but the principle still remains. Wherever we find pleasure, there we are attached. Then what is aversion to it? It's the opposite. Aversion is that which dwells on pain. We don't want to do that. So that which gives us pain, we immediately want to get away from it. But this formula of push and pull doesn't help us. It in fact entrenches our misery. Flowing through its own nature and established even in the learned is the clinging to life, even in the learned. Now there's a long commentary that Swami Vivekananda gives us, and we won't have time to go through it. But it is worth studying, and if you have a copy of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and particularly those in the second section of Raja Yoga, then you'll see in the second chapter of this, or the second section, I should say, the second portion, Khanda of this, you'll see these things being dealt with in a very systematic, logical way. And when we understand what is being read or taught or expounded, we see, that's true in my life. So the source of happiness is denied to me when I don't attend to these things. Now, the most important message, though, is in the title of the talk. Because if we see that this world is a kind of delusion, a kind of play of waves, we have to then say, where are these waves coming from? These waves are only come from one source, the immortal source. It is that supreme Brahman or Atman. It is that God. It is that entity that is behind all of this, manifesting itself in this world. I mentioned the Purusha Suktam. It views this whole cosmos as a person, one single cosmos, one single person. And having all components that makes space the skin in our kind of creative, artistic imagining of it. We can see that it is all a series of sacrifices going on. When we're exploring this mysterious thing, which has been called dark energy, something that is pushing the universe far apart at a rapid rate instead of slowing things down, then a later discovery sees that space is not uniform. There are pockets of vacuums. There are places where no matter is there and places where more dense matter is. And so there's a variable expansion going on. The latest discovery is not a uniform thing going on equally everywhere. It depends on the density contained within pockets of the observable universe. So in this way, we see our patchy life going on, and we'll see it as a cosmic person, and we have to see it as a lila maya. If we are deluded, we can only come to one explanation, and that it is a sport, it's a play. And if we don't view it like this, then of course we can have a simple sense of humor. I served on a panel yesterday. There was somebody from the Jewish religion, somebody from the Catholic religion, somebody from the Hindu religion, namely me, somebody from the Muslim community. And I began by saying, so there was a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew and a Hindu. Now be prepared for a joke. It's the beginning of a joke which you yourself can complete. In other words, we take life so seriously because we feel bogged down by it. We feel it's oppressing us in some way. Just as if we were selected for the sport of hurdling, you see, it's very difficult. No, you practice. And you practice with a sense of achievement and joy. That means that we have a formula to overcome awkward situations. So if the road is strewn with thorns, put tough shoes on, you have them. If a road is full of potholes, use a four-wheel drive. If things become awkward, there is always a remedy. Nature supplies it in the form of our own intelligence, our own creativity, our own physical body, and our own mind. How is it that humans stand upright? If you study, for example, the cats or meerkats even in the African bush. The horizon or the bush or something in the way is not an obstacle for them. They stretch themselves up on their hind legs and they're able to view all the way around, and they can turn their head in all directions and alert others to the danger. There are no obstacles which are insurmountable in this world. We are equipped. We don't have wings. There's an aspiration from probably all of us. We would love to fly like the bird and drift in the currents of the air. Well, human ingenuity provides aircraft, sometimes in the form of gliders that can do it, and sometimes in the form of sophisticated engineering called aircraft. And jet engines are there, and we can fly above the clouds. It's a wonder. Our ancestors of old that didn't have this technology would marvel. A big thing like this, a big several ton weight of metal, and you're going to make that defy gravity and go above the clouds. Yes, aeronautical engineering will do it. You take the natural propensity for the wind. You see how velocity can create a vacuum undercurrent and lift the aircraft up and flow under the wings and keep it supported. As long as you keep the speed up, the altitude will also be high. So we don't have to wait around for just wishfully looking at birds in flight. That, of course, is a sense of divine wonder in itself. Look at the ingenuity of the feathers on a wing. As you look at an eagle that has this huge wingspan and see how aerodynamically it is designed, as it were, and how it uses these same principles. And studying that with a wish to fly, our engineering supplies all the components necessary, and we can fly above the clouds. All of modern technology, including artificial intelligence, is due to man's ingenuity. Don't think that it is man that is clever. All that intelligence is supplied by that supreme omniscient one which sits behind, expressing itself through the small avenues, small keyholes, if you like, of the human apparatus. So let us resort to wallowing in the glory of the divine that sits within, that provides us with infinite possibilities, infinite possibilities. If we had a vision statement, as it were, or a kind of motto for an era Vedanta society, we would say infinite possibilities, supplying everybody with infinite possibilities, not from outside, but from inside yourself. So may we overcome all the obstacles, identify the obstacles, and do them with a sense of fun and joy, a sporting attitude, and your whole life will change because your approach to it will change. And it no longer is a painful thing, but a glorious sport, a glorious lila, a glorious divine play. Ramakrishna put it this way: it's like a coin. Nitya, the eternal, is on the one side, and lila is on the other side. A mansion of mirth is how he describes it. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.